You're live with Philippa Thomas on BBC World News. Growing concern for the star tennis player who'd accused one of China's top politicians of sexual assault. An email allegedly from Peng Shuai claims she's resting at home, but world tennis chiefs are calling for independent and verifiable proof of her safety. The actor Alec Baldwin faces a new lawsuit over the shooting on a film set, with lawyers calling him reckless.
In our opinion, Mr. Baldwin chose to play Russian roulette when he fired a gun without checking it.
A state of emergency is declared in the Canadian province of British Columbia as floods force thousands to leave their homes. And the stakes are high as students in South Korea sit a grueling 8-hour college entrance exam, often called the toughest in the world. In the next half hour, we'll be live in Berlin and we'll hear from our correspondents in Shanghai and Bialystok, near the border between Poland and Belarus. Hello, welcome. There are new fears for the safety of the missing Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai after the game's authorities cast doubt on an email that appears to be from her. Peng Shuai, a former #1 ranked tennis doubles player, disappeared from public view after accusing a former senior Chinese leader of forcing her to have sex with him. An email supposedly from Ms. Peng said, "The news, including that allegation of sexual assault, isn't true. I'm not missing, nor am I unsafe. I've just been resting at home and everything is fine." In response, the head of the Women's Tennis Association has said, "I have a hard time believing that Peng Shuai actually wrote the email we received or believes what's being attributed to her." Well, our correspondent Robin Brandt is in Shanghai.
Well, it popped up overnight. It's the first communications, apparently, from Peng Shuai. It starts with the words, "Hello, everyone," even though it was purportedly sent to Steve Simon, the man in charge of the Women's Tennis Association. It goes on to say that the allegations made against that vice premier a couple of weeks ago, it says they are false. It says, though, she is safe, she's not hiding, everything is fine, she says. Apparently, in this email attributed to her, she says she is at home resting. Now, there are suspicions, though, for numerous reasons about the authenticity of this email. It popped up overnight and an image was put on social media by CGTN. That's one arm of state media here. Like I said, the opening words, "Hello everyone," are odd for an email addressed to a single man. There is a cursor as well on one of the lines you can see in the image. So that's led to suspicions that in fact it is a screenshot. So, many questions, unanswered questions, and the most strongest coming really from Steve Simon, that man in charge of the WTA, who said he finds it hard to believe it is from her. And he has called on the authorities here to find out where she is, check she's okay, but also go back to her original allegations, the allegations that she was forced to have sex with that vice premier before a consensual relationship between the two of them followed.
Well, I'm now joined by Marieke Olberg, who's a senior fellow at the Asia programme at the German Marshall Fund. She leads the Stockholm China Forum and is expert on China's media and digital policies. Marieke, thank you so much for being with us here on BBC World News. And I wonder how questionable you find this email.
I find it very questionable, and I think it's really important to understand the background here. This is an incredibly common way for the Chinese state to communicate. We've seen this multiple times. When various booksellers disappeared from Hong Kong in 2015, we had similar letters appearing saying, "I'm not missing, I'm fine, don't come looking for me." When relatives of Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities who've gone missing in Xinjiang and the northwest of China inquire about their relatives, the Chinese state will sometimes produce videos of them accusing their relatives to stop lying and to claim that everything is fine. So this is an incredibly common pattern of communicating. And one other thing I want to highlight here is that this is essentially a demonstration of power on the the part of the Chinese state. The goal is not necessarily to convince people that these people are fine, but rather to signal it is now time to shut up about their case. Please don't keep talking about them. And that is why it is so incredibly important to keep raising their cases and to not go along with this demand from the Chinese state to stop talking about them.
So are you saying that this email is deliberately clumsy, or that they don't care if it's clumsy because the point is to intimidate?
I can't say if this is deliberately clumsy or if this is just sloppiness. My personal guess is it's sloppiness, but that's, again, if your goal is not to convince people, but to intimidate people and to get a message across, those small details matter a lot less. So you're a lot less likely to pay attention to them. So it's very hard to say if that's intentional to send a message or it's mere sloppiness. But really, the goal is to intimidate. So essentially, it doesn't matter.
And let's go back to the matter at hand. I mean, she had accused a very senior Chinese government official of sexual assault. Is there precedent for investigating such allegations?
I think it should absolutely be investigated. I can't comment on the individual case, but I think some people wouldn't come forward with allegations against a high-ranking member of the government. They have nothing to gain from coming forward with such allegations. They have everything to lose, as I think we've seen with how Peng Shuai's case has been handled. So, of course, the fact that she's come forward means that it should be investigated rather than simply disappearing her from public view.
What do you make of the reaction from the tennis world?
I'm incredibly glad that the WTA is reacting like this and that they're not playing along with this game that the Chinese state is trying to put up. Some other organizations, such as the International Olympic Committee, have, I think, reacted quite differently, saying they're encouraged by assurances that she's safe. And that's exactly the wrong reaction. You need to keep pushing, we need to keep pressing in order to ensure that she's actually safe, because the more focus there is on her case, the more likely that she's going to be okay in the end.
Marieke Olberg, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Actor Alec Baldwin and other producers on the film Rust are facing a new lawsuit over the fatal shooting of the cinematographer Halyna Hutchins. The film's supervisor, Mamie Mitchell, alleges that the script didn't call for a gun to be fired. Her lawyer has accused Alec Baldwin of playing Russian roulette when he fired the gun without checking it. Our North America correspondent David Willis reports.
Barely a month on and the lawsuits are growing. Script supervisor Mamie Mitchell, the latest to sue after a shot fired by Alec Baldwin killed a colleague just a few feet away from her.
I heard someone moaning and I turned around and my director was falling backwards and holding his upper body. And I turned around toward Alec and I saw Halyna going down to the left of me.
42-year-old cinematographer Halyna Hutchins died after being shot in the stomach by a bullet which also injured the film's director. Mamie Mitchell was the first to call 911.
Bonanza Creek Ranch has had 2 people accidentally shot on a movie set by a prop gun. We need help immediately.
Her lawsuit claims Alec Baldwin should have checked the gun himself before firing it, and she's suing him and the film's producers for negligence.
Mr. Baldwin chose to play Russian roulette when he fired a gun without checking it and without having the armorer do so in his presence. His behavior and that of the producers on Rust was reckless.
How live ammunition made it onto the film set in the foothills of northern New Mexico is at the center of an investigation that's being carried out by local police. The person responsible for guns on the set, 24-year-old armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, has claimed there was sabotage, and several crew members are known to have walked off the production only hours before the shooting, citing concerns over safety. Mamie Mitchell is also claiming that the scene Alec Baldwin was rehearsing at the time of the shooting didn't actually call for a gun to be fired, and she says the resulting tragedy will live with her forever.
I'll never forget what happened on the set of Rust that day. I relived the shooting and the sound of the explosion from the gun over and over again. I'm depressed, I don't feel safe. I feel like at any moment anything could happen to me and to those that I care about that are standing close to me.
Mimi Mitchell is seeking undisclosed damages. There's been no response to the lawsuit from Alec Baldwin. Previously, he said he was heartbroken by the incident and was fully cooperating with the police inquiry. David Willis, BBC News, Los Angeles.
Let's give you a look at some of our other news stories this hour. A review of more than 70 studies has found that mask wearing is the most effective non-pharmaceutical way to tackle the spread of COVID-19. In the first global study of its kind, scientists found that while there were clear benefits to social distancing and hand washing, masks cut the incidence of coronavirus by 53%. In Sudan, there's been more violence following the deaths of several people during these clashes with security forces on Wednesday. A further 15 people were shot dead as large crowds took to the streets of Khartoum on Thursday to demonstrate against last month's coup. Funerals for the victims are due to be held over the next few hours. 24 aid workers are going on trial in Greece today, charged with espionage. They include Sean Binder, an Irish professional diver, and Sarah Mardini, a Syrian Olympic-level swimmer. They were working for an organisation dedicated to assisting migrants. Amnesty International has called the case farcical. People in Germany are now being urged to avoid large gatherings as a fourth COVID wave threatens to overwhelm hospitals. The country's health agency chief has issued a stark warning that intensive care beds are filling up rapidly as weekly infection rates soar to an all-time high. Other European countries are also struggling. France has registered more than 20,000 new confirmed coronavirus infections for the first time since the 25th of August. Belgium has tightened its coronavirus restrictions, mandating wider use of masks and enforcing work from home as cases spike. Dutch health authorities said they were running short of COVID-19 tests as the Netherlands registered more than 20,000 new cases for the second day in a row. And Russia has reported a new record one-day official death toll of 1,247 from COVID-19. Well, let's get more now on the situation in Germany. We can go now to Damien McGuinness in Berlin. And Damien, some important meetings today. What do politicians have to decide there?
Well, as you know, Philippa, we had an election in September, so we're now seeing a transition of government, which is the worst time possible because, as you say, we have record high infection rates here. What happens next week is that Angela Merkel's emergency law for her outgoing government expires. So what that means is the incoming government has to introduce new laws to fight the pandemic. And that's what Parliament really is deciding on right now. They've had a controversial debate all morning because Angela Merkel's Conservatives say this emergency law should be extended. The new incoming coalition partners say, well, we need a different type of measures now. And what they propose are tougher measures when it comes to the workplace, which would be essentially you either have to be vaccinated or get a daily test to go to work. Also, only vaccinated people or tested people can use public transport. These would be quite a big change to what's been happening so far, because already, though, we are seeing tougher measures for unvaccinated people throughout Germany. In many regions, you have to be vaccinated if you want to go inside a cafe, bar, restaurant, or use the gym or go to the hairdressers. So really, over the past few weeks, we've seen a ratcheting up of pressure on people who are not vaccinated as really sort of encouragement to try and get them to go and get the jab, because that is really seen as the way forward here in Germany. Officials say that without a higher vaccine uptake, we're not going to get these infection rates down.
And that ratcheting up of pressure, how's that going down in public? Is there much of a backlash?
Not really, because it's happened so gradually. So initially, some of those rules were you had to be vaccinated or could get a test. Now those rules are you have to be vaccinated. And I think for the majority of people, the fact that these numbers are so high, you know, Germany has never seen infection rates like this throughout the whole pandemic. Officials say this is the worst phase of the pandemic Germany is going through. So the fact that things are suddenly very bad does mean that most voters, the majority, say they want tough action on this. And even though the third jab, the booster program is slow in the rollout, overall vaccine take-up is only just below the European average. It's about the same as the UK. 70% of the entire population have had 2 jabs. So it's not low, and most people say they do support the vaccine rollout, but there is a small or a sizable minority of people who are still hesitant. And I think it's those people that the governments are trying to reach. The difficulty is, though, that the infection rates we're seeing right now, 65,000 today, will translate, unfortunately, into hospitalisation rates over the next few weeks. And that's the danger. And that's why clinics and hospitals are saying they are fearing being overwhelmed over the next month.
Damien, thanks very much for that update. A state of emergency has been declared in the Canadian province of British Columbia, which has been hit by torrential rain, floods and landslides. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, says hundreds of armed forces personnel are heading to the province to help. Roads have been washed away, several mountain towns are cut off, and there is no access to Canada's biggest port, Vancouver. At least one person has died. The number of fatalities is expected to rise. Suzanne Kiampo reports.
A state of emergency, catastrophic flooding, thousands displaced, and more people trapped. This is Canada's western province of British Columbia underwater, after Mother Nature dumped the monthly rainfall average for the region in a matter of just 24 hours. This part of Canada is on a floodplain. When it became clear the town of Abbotsford was in danger, there was a race by 300 people to sandbag near the pump station, working through the night.
My prayer has been that the river will drop another meter or more. Let us open up those floodgates. That will buy us some more time.
Officials in the region blame climate change for the natural disaster, specifically an atmospheric river, a long strip of moisture in the air that transports water from tropical areas toward the poles. The impact of climate change on the frequency of storms is still unclear, but we do know that increased sea surface temperatures warm the air above and make more energy available to drive hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons. The result, more extreme and more intense rainfall. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in Washington for a Canada-US-Mexico summit, where the environment is on the agenda.
Obviously, extremely concerned about the situation in British Columbia right now, and quite frankly, what hundreds of families are going through. Thousands of people affected across the province by these extreme weather events.
It's only been a few days since world leaders wrapped up a high-profile COP26 climate conference in Glasgow, where the British Prime Minister tried to evoke a sense of urgency in his counterparts.
Humanity has long since run down the clock on climate change. It's 1 minute to midnight on that doomsday clock, and we need to act now.
But the results of the gathering appear minimal, and Mother Nature is clearly not letting up. Suzanne Kiampo, BBC News.
You're live with Philippa Thomas. Still to come, we'll take you live to the Polish border, where authorities say they've detained more than 100 migrants who tried to cross overnight.
Opportunities can be hard to find, like catching lightning in a bottle. In uncertain times, it's tempting to retreat or simply wait and see. At CME Group, we empower those who act. We deliver tools to help manage risk and capture opportunities in every market climate, across every major asset class, to seize each possibility at precisely the right moment. CME Group, opportunity is everywhere.
Life has a wonderful taste. Let Grana Padano show you how to savor it. Grana Padano. Life is there to be savored.
Hello, you're live with Philippa Thomas. Polish officials say they've detained more than 100 migrants who tried to cross the border from Belarus overnight. The Ministry of Defence released this video footage showing a large group of migrants sitting on the ground and Polish security forces surrounding them. They accused the Belarus police of forcing the migrants to throw stones at Polish soldiers to divert attention from another crossing attempt. While President Alexander Lukashenko denies that Belarus is trying to destabilise the European Union by encouraging people to cross the border. Meanwhile, thousands remain trapped at the frontier. Our Europe correspondent Jenny Hill is in Białystok, near the border.
The situation at the border seems to have calmed somewhat actually since then, and there's a bit of confusion around the numbers that the Polish authorities are giving out this morning. Depending on which source you look at, between 1,000 and 2,000 people, they say, still camped out on the Belarusian side. Now, as you know, we can't get to the border ourselves. The Polish government won't allow journalists through, so we can't have a good look ourselves. But the Polish border guards did last night publish a little bit of footage showing people sat out by tents around campfires in the open. On the Belarusian side, we understand that many of these people are now sheltering in a logistics warehouse, so a slightly more robust shelter, a bit more appropriate given the weather conditions. The temperatures drop down to around freezing at night. The Belarusian Red Cross say that some of those people were also taken to accommodation at a nearby children's holiday camp. Overnight, we understand there were a number of attempted crossings on the border. Again, that's happening every single night. Those people are desperate to get to Europe. We're also told by Polish border guards and from refugees themselves that in some cases the Belarusian forces are actually trying to push them across using force and threats. But as I say, at the moment things seem to be relatively calm, with of course talk of buses taking some of those people back to Minsk, potentially today, to get on flights back to Iraq.
The situation on the border has sparked anger in the Polish government, which told the BBC the president of Belarus is acting with the full support of Russia.
Violence is we are not comfortable with the violence, but it's not us. I mean, it's not the Polish side being aggressive in this hybrid attack. It is Mr. Lukashenko who is responsible for that, encouraging people to come to Belarus with the promise to cross illegally the border, and then encouraging them to be more and more aggressive. As we've seen 2 days ago, the group of young male was throwing stones to on our soldiers. So that was basically the only option. I mean, we are, of course, very much interested in solving this issue, but to do that, we need to exert pressure on Lukashenko and Putin, who supports him. After rigged elections in August last year in Belarus, Mr. Lukashenko faced a lot of protests all over the Belarus. People of Belarus wanted to change the political establishment of Minsk. Mr. Lukashenko survived only because of the political and not only political support of Mr. Putin. So now Lukashenko is on full dependency on Putin. So anything is happening now in Belarus, absolutely there is a green light from Kremlin for that.
Students in South Korea are currently sitting the college entrance exam, an 8-hour marathon sometimes called the toughest exam in the world. Our Korea correspondent Laura Bicker has been documenting the preparations of 3 Korean students.
The big day has arrived. So much depends on this one exam that parents can't help but watch and worry and make sure their loved ones have everything they need. For the last 100 days, we asked 3 students to record their thoughts as they prepare for this life-changing test.
한국에 10 to 10이라고 아세요? 아침 10시부터 저녁 10시까지 학원에서 있는 걸 10 to 10이라고들 많이 하거든요. 그걸 아마 한국 학생들은 어린 나이부터 많이 겪는 것 같아요.
저는 이제 과외를 하러 갑니다.
이 상황이 계속 반복되는 거. 내일 아침에도 일어나서 똑같이 어제랑 똑같은 하루 보내고 주말에는 더 일찍 일어나서 더 열심히 해야 하고 진짜 지칠 때도 엄청 많고 울고 싶을 때도 엄청 많고 다 그만두고 싶을 때도 있는데
여기 있는 학교가 저희 학교예요.
Gayon goes to school on an island with only 19 students in her grade. There are now just 10 days to go until the big exam and she has to go to the mainland. Good luck, someone shouts as she leaves.
감사합니다. 조금 약간 부담감은 계속 있는 것 같아요. 약간 내가 실수하면 어떡하지? 저는 별로 좋진 않다고 생각을 해요. 너무 이제 학창 생활에 재밌는 것도 즐기면서 해야 되는데.
오늘은 드디어 수능이 있는 주에 나 진짜 수능 보는구나 막 두근두근 거리기도 하고.
Hansel goes to an alternative school that puts less emphasis on exams and more on gaining real-life experience.
내가 수능 못 보면 어떡하지? 내가 수능을 잘 못 보면은 난 약간 좀 실패한 사람인 거 아닐까? 내가 이 정도로 가치가 없는 사람인가? 내가 이 정도로 능력이 없는 사람인가? 라는 생각이 들게 하는 교육인 것 같아요. 이런 수능과 입시 교육 자체가. 하지만 저는 그렇게 생각을 했지만 지금은 그렇게 생각하지 않습니다. 정말 수능 성적이 말해주는 건 수능 성적밖에 없으니까요.
10,000 police have been sent out into the streets to make sure that students get to Sunong on time. And even to help them focus, aeroplanes will be stopped from flying overhead in the middle of the listening exam. After 12 years of eat, study, sleep, repeat, the only thing they can do now is their best.
Laura Bicker, BBC News, Seoul.
And if you've never seen millions of crabs on the move before, you'd better get your claws into these pictures from Australia. The crustacean commute takes place on Christmas Island. It's one of the largest animal migrations on the planet. They even swarm up specially made bridges and across roads closed to cars. Thank you for being with us.